Hey guys, JD here, and this is part 3 of the ultimate comparison between the Yamaha FX SVHO WaveRunner and the Kawasaki Ultra 310 jet ski. I purchased both these skis brand new off the showroom floor. These were not sent to me by one of the manufacturers. I maintain, service, repair, and upgrade these skis completely on my own. They've never been to an outside mechanic or dealer other than the day they came off the showroom floor. So I'm going to provide you with the ultimate perspective on not only what it means to ride these machines, but what it means to maintain them and service them. So from the engine to the jet pump and everything in between, I'm going to go over how these skis are similar and what makes them different. We're going to cover some detailed technical aspects of these skis not covered anywhere else on YouTube. So grab your popcorn and let's go. In part 1 of this series, I covered the deck and hull, jet pump, engine and supercharger, and electrical system. In part 2, I covered the reverse system, display and gauges, and seat and ergonomics. Make sure to check out part 1 and part 2 if you haven't already. When purchasing a personal watercraft, one of the top considerations should be what maintenance do these machines require to function properly. In this segment, I'm going to cover the top maintenance items for both the Kawasaki Ultra 310 and the FX SVHO. The Kawasaki Ultra 310 jet ski is a serious high-powered machine, and serious machines require serious maintenance. For the Ultra 310, Kawasaki recommends changing the engine oil every 25 hours. They recommend changing the filter every 100 hours. However, for extreme duty machines, these intervals should be pushed. Note that on the Kawasaki Ultra 310, the oil filter is particularly challenging to access. And if the filter is installed too tightly, well, that makes it even more challenging. The service manual actually recommends removing the intake manifold to access the filter, although that's not necessary, as I demonstrate in a couple different videos. The Ultra 310 requires full synthetic motor oil. Using anything less than 1040 could seriously damage the machine. The Ultra 310's 1.5-liter engine holds a total of 5.8 quarts of motor oil, whereas the Yamaha 1.8-liter SVHO engine holds 5.6 quarts, slightly less than the Kawasaki. But although the Yamaha has a slightly less oil capacity, the oil filter is almost twice the diameter of the Kawasaki filter, something interesting that I never realized before comparing these two side by side. When it comes to spark plugs, the Ultra 310 has NGK Laser Platinum PMR 9B plugs from the factory. These plugs should be changed every 25 hours according to Kawasaki. These plugs are also very expensive, at an average of about $20 a plug. And you'd be very unintelligent if you installed these plugs without using anti-seize and a torque wrench. The Ultra 310 eats through spark plugs quicker than other personal watercraft due primarily to its updraft style exhaust. The water boxes on the Ultra 310 hold a little more than 5 gallons of water, and if the personal watercraft is stored without this water being properly evacuated, moisture can travel up the exhaust system into the combustion chamber, causing the plugs to corrode prematurely. If you're looking to save costs, you can run these Iridium CR9 EIX plugs on your Ultra 310. Due to the style of the spark plug boots on the Ultra 310, it's critical to install marine grease on these spark plug boots before inserting them back into your valve cover. Failure to grease these properly after every spark plug change will result in seizure and breakage of the boots. The Kawasaki Ultra 310 jet ski features a ribbon-type exhaust filter element in its exhaust system. This is primarily due to the updraft style exhaust. This filter element is designed to mitigate moisture accumulation in the combustion chamber. However, the part itself, in my opinion, is manufactured poorly. Kawasaki originally recommended a 50-hour maintenance change interval, but this bulletin you see above bumped that to 25 hours. And let me tell you, if you ride in salt water, you will need to change this exhaust filter every 25 hours at a great expense. This is one of the maintenance items on this ski that I absolutely cannot stand. If you plan to keep your machine completely stock, be prepared to spend a couple $1,000s a year on replacing these exhaust filters. Even if you do the work yourself following my comprehensive guides, the parts are still very expensive. When the exhaust filter fails, Sometimes it turns sideways, completely obstructing the flow of exhaust out of the jet ski. This translates to reduced performance and lost speed. Now let's talk about the supercharger belt tensioner assembly. Unlike other personal watercraft that rely on internal gear-driven sprag clutches, the Kawasaki Ultra 310's supercharger is driven by a serpentine belt. To keep this belt properly tensioned, Kawasaki utilizes a tensioner control arm. This arm contains a bushing. This bushing comes dry from the factory. This bushing must be removed, cleaned, and greased every 25 hours to maintain peak performance out of your supercharger. A seized bushing translates to lost boost, lost speed, and lost performance. Another component of the tensioner assembly is the spring itself. This spring also has rubber bushings that need to be removed, cleaned, and greased every 25 hours. Finally, the tensioner assembly contains this idler pulley. From the factory, the pulley is steel and only lasts about 50 hours before it needs to be replaced. Now let's look at the supercharger drive belt. This belt is very inexpensive and is fairly easy to change compared to the clutch units on competing personal watercraft. These belts are about $80 a pop and can last anywhere between 50 and 500 hours, depending on riding style and how aggressive you are on that throttle. Now let's talk about checking valve lash and shimming the valves. This should be done every 100 hours on the Kawasaki Ultra 310. And let me tell you, you will need to reshim your valves every 100 hours, especially the exhaust valves. Failure to do this can result in lost performance and catastrophic engine damage. Don't skimp on this. I see so many people that just neglect checking their valve lash and shimming the valves. It's a little overwhelming, but it has to be done. So either do it yourself or have a mechanic do it. The Kawasaki and Yamaha, the process is identical, and it's the same as pretty much every Japanese motorcycle manufactured in the last 40 years. The Ultra 310 has one of the most durable jet pumps in the industry, with more bearings than any of the competitors. This pump needs to be removed and inspected every 25 hours under normal usage. If the bearings are tight or the impeller housing is out of spec, it's time to replace the pump. I've personally found that with hard saltwater use, this pump, bearings, and impeller need to be replaced about every 150 hours. However, if you're willing to sacrifice performance and speed, you can run the pump much longer than that. Kawasaki Ultra 310 jet pumps don't have a replaceable wear ring, so if the pump body starts to swell, you'll have to replace the entire stator housing, and usually the impeller as well. If you're looking to maintain your machine in tip-top performance, make sure to grease these quick connect fittings and cable ends after every single ride. If you're too lazy to do that, at least do it every 25 hours. Now let's talk about the fuel filter assembly. Now I'm going to start by saying that the fuel pump on the new Ultra 310s, and the whole assembly itself for that matter, are absolutely awful. Kawasaki recommends cleaning the fuel pump screen every 25 hours. But to get to this filter requires a substantial amount of disassembly. Check out my video on the fuel pump assembly if you're curious to see what that takes. This is one of the most critical things you have to do because a blocked up fuel filter translates to decreased flow, which translates to lost speed, RPM, and performance. The Ultra 310 pump itself is very poor quality and, as I said, is a complete pain in the ass to change. This filter bag is very fine mesh, meaning that even a little bit of contamination will cause you to lose performance. I highly recommend upgrading your fuel pump assembly. I'm not going to get into the specifics here, but just know that the fuel pump is a major pinch point on these skis and should be serviced regularly if you intend to keep the stock one, but my recommendation is that you get rid of the stock one and upgrade this to a high-flow, high-performance fuel pump assembly like this one shown here from Kawi Performance. Now this doesn't apply just to the Ultra 310, but this is the fuel tank vent line. Always make sure that the vent line is clear, that the check valve is functioning properly, and that there's no obstructions in the outlet port. Keep in mind that if the fuel tank can't breathe, if air can't come into the tank, then fuel can't come out. Now let's talk about the handlebar pivot steering assembly bushing. This bushing needs to be unassembled, lubricated, cleaned, and reassembled every 25 hours. Failure to properly service this bushing will result in tightened steering and possible loss of control. The steering cable itself should also be lubricated at the end every 25 hours at a minimum, although the more you do this, the longer the cable will last. Finally, let's talk about one critical thing you have to do on your Ultra 310 after every single ride in either fresh or salt water, and that is properly fogging the Eaton TVS supercharger. Now, I've tried pretty much every commercially available fogging oil. As long as you use something, that's better than nothing. Following the flush procedure, remove this supercharger fogging cap and spray the fogging oil into the supercharger for about 10 seconds to adequately coat the needle bearings and rotors and the supercharger's internal components. This is critical if you want to maintain the longevity of your machine. Now, this is not a comprehensive list of every single maintenance item on the Ultra 310, just some of the top items that owners should be aware of before purchasing this machine. If hearing about all those maintenance items on the Kawasaki Ultra 310 gives you heartburn, well, the Yamaha FX SVHO may be a better ski for you. The Yamaha features extremely simplified maintenance. Let's first talk about oil changes. Yamaha recommends that the oil in this machine be changed every 50 hours or 12 months, and that the filter be changed every 100 hours. Interestingly, as I mentioned previously, the oil filter for the Yamaha is almost twice the size of the filter provided for the Kawasaki Ultra 310. Compared to the very difficult to access filter on the Kawasaki, the Yamaha's oil filter is in plain view and is extremely simple to change. Just make sure to use a torque wrench and the special filter wrench tool from Yamaha. Yamaha's 1.8 liter engine holds a total of 5.6 quarts of oil, slightly less than the 1.5 liter Kawasaki. Now let's talk about the spark plugs. Yamaha recommends changing the spark plugs every 100 hours or 12 months. The Yamaha takes a much cheaper standard plug than the Kawasaki's Platinum plugs. The LFR7A V-Power plug is just basic copper. They retail for about $10 a piece. But, again, you'd be very unintelligent to install these without anti-seize and without using a torque wrench. Before reinstalling the coil-on plug modules, make sure to apply a liberal amount of marine grease to the base of the spark plug boot. This will ensure that the boot doesn't become seized in the valve cover. Now let's talk about the Yamaha throttle valve lubrication procedure. Yamaha recommends that the throttle valve be properly lubricated every 12 months or 100 hours. And from my experience, if you fail to do this step, the throttle valve plate will corrode and rust, impeding the operation of the throttle valve assembly. Now let's talk about valve lash and valve shims. Just like on the Kawasaki Ultra 310, it's critical that you check the valve lash and re-shim your valves as necessary every 200 hours on the Yamaha 1.8 liter engines. Failure to do this will result in lost performance and can result in catastrophic engine damage. Yamaha recommends checking valve lash and re-shimming the valves every 200 hours. For the last 30 years, Yamaha WaveRunners have featured what I think is one of the most robust drive shaft bearing carriers in the industry. Yamaha recommends adding grease to the intermediate housing every 12 months or 100 hours. If serviced properly, this unit will last for the life of the WaveRunner. Yamaha recommends inspecting the jet pump every 100 hours. Check the impeller, wear ring, bearings, and pump housing, and service or replace any components as necessary. Finally, especially if used in heavy salt water, I recommend greasing all the fittings on the jet pump and cable linkages every 25 hours, or after every ride if you really want to ensure that these components don't rust or corrode. And keep in mind that these aren't all the maintenance items for the Yamaha or Kawasaki. These are just some very notable top items that you should be aware of. So let's cover the summary. For the Kawasaki Ultra 310, you'll need to service the oil and filter, the spark plugs, the exhaust filter, the steering pivot bushing, the tensioner assembly, the supercharger belt, the fuel filter assembly, valve shims, jet pump bearings. You'll need to grease the fittings, and you'll need to fog the supercharger after every ride. Now let's talk about the Yamaha FX SVHO. You'll need to service the oil and oil filter, the spark plugs. You'll need to lubricate the throttle valve. You'll need to check and adjust the valve shims. You'll need to add grease to the intermediate housing bearing. You'll need to service the jet pump bearings. You'll need to apply grease to the linkages. And this is listed with an asterisk because I didn't discuss it in this section, but you will need to replace the sprag clutch on your supercharger. This is not technically a maintenance wear item, at least by Yamaha's standards, but many riders find that this clutch needs regular replacement. Now let's talk about defects and known issues. So this is going to cover the top 5 known defects and issues for the Yamaha FX SVHO and the Kawasaki Ultra 310. Now these are issues that I've personally encountered or have been directly contacted about from viewers of my channel. These issues are confirmed to still exist as of 2025. First, let's start with Yamaha and the sprag clutch that drives the HKS supercharger. An AI-assisted meta-analysis of forums across the internet reveals that this is the #1 issue reported by Yamaha FX SVHO owners. Some clutches fail after just a couple dozen hours, while other users report hundreds of hours on their clutches. It really depends how you ride. Personally, I ride offshore. Coming in and out of the water causes the supercharger to clutch and declutch very rapidly. This is the type of riding that wears out this sprag clutch prematurely. Premature clutch failures are often associated with modified machines running above the factory rev limiter. The more boost you run and the more RPM you run, the more likely this clutch is to fail. Some industry experts recommend adequate throttle control as a means to preserve the clutch, although this is not always practical. Check out my video on adding a Fizzle BOV kit to reduce back pressure and extend clutch life. Despite numerous improvements that have been made to the casting over the years, I still continue to see reports of cracked heads on supercharged Yamaha 1.8-liter engines. While many of these reports relate to machines that have been heavily modified or are running excessive amounts of boost, I have seen numerous reports of this happening on fully stock machines right out of the gate. It's well known that the FX SVHO 1.8-liter engine has some hot spots in the cooling jacket. It's my opinion that users who run their skis out of the water for excessive amounts of time, or users who have an obstructed cooling system, may be more prone to experiencing cracks in the head assembly. If you plan to modify your FX SVHO beyond Stage 1, it's highly recommended that you complete a comprehensive cooling system upgrade, which includes upgrading some of the OEM components to accommodate higher flow through the cooling system. This is absolutely critical if you're running over 8,000 RPM on these skis. It's no secret that Yamaha became notorious for issues with peeling, cracking, and delamination on the paint and hull surfaces across their WaveRunner line. These issues unfortunately impacted FX SVHO owners as well. While Yamaha did switch to SMC fiberglass in 2022, some issues with paint still persist. The image above is a nano accel hull, and while this type of aggressive delamination does not seem to occur on new SMC hulls, the painted SMC hulls are still susceptible to the paint peeling. So although the hull surface itself is no longer delaminating, as you see in the image above, the paint can still peel right off. Now this is a very rare occurrence. I personally talked to dozens of Yamaha FX owners, and many of them don't have any issue at all with the paint. Now factory defects aside, the painted surfaces on the FX are still more fragile and delicate than those on the Kawasaki Ultra 310, which by the way is made from gel coat. So these Yamahas are very susceptible to owner neglect. You have to baby the ski, or else it'll end up looking like this. Damage like this exposes the inner hull surface, which can lead ultimately to delamination and hull failure. The FX SVHO features this modern touchscreen display, and while the display looks great, I've heard over a half dozen reports of D-pads and touchscreen LCDs failing on relatively new WaveRunners. Now many of these cases were replaced under warranty, but if your warranty's expired, you're going to have to shell out a hefty chunk of change to replace this fancy touchscreen display. I personally haven't had any issues with the display at all, but my WaveRunner, as shown in this video, is a fairly new machine. Also relating to the display is the persistent and annoying low fuel alarm on the Yamaha FX. Now, I was under the impression this was fixed for the 2025 model year, but I was mistaken. So this alarm for low fuel goes off when the tank is really about half full. And the worst part is you can't use the D-pad to silence the alarm any longer. You must actually reach up and physically tap this teeny little indicator on the touchscreen display. So if you're out in the ocean in challenging conditions, you're trying to maintain your situational awareness and focus, and you turn the alarm off, 5 minutes later it comes back on, you gotta reach over the handlebars and tap that little red icon. Very poor design. Speaking of poor designs, this is the flame arrestor ribbon in the intake manifold of the FX 1.8 SVHO. And all the fears you see online are completely valid. This is a brand new machine. This video above was taken on a ski with less than 10 hours, and already that ribbon had turned sideways. What happens is that rubber gasket on the flame arrestor ribbon comes off and gets sucked in and essentially can destroy your engine. And so I personally recommend removing that ribbon. Now, if you remove that ribbon, the ski will no longer have a flame arrestor. So you have to make sure that you install a US Coast Guard approved flame arrestor intake element on the ski for safety reasons if you remove this element from the manifold. Now, will this void your warranty? It may, but I am not willing to have my engine destroyed over a defective design like this. Now let's talk about issues and defects with the Kawasaki Ultra 310 jet ski. Without any debate, the biggest issue with the Kawasaki Ultra 310 jet ski is with the electrical system and the wire harness. This wire harness is a dumpster fire. I've gone through 3 harnesses so far on a 3-year-old ski, and that is just unconscionable. If I didn't love the hull and the platform so much, I would have dumped this ski primarily because of the electrical issues that Kawasaki just can't seem to fix. Now, they've outsourced the production of this harness to a third world country, and they just can't get the engineering and production of this harness right. And that continues to this day. In my inbox, archived right now, I probably have 100 emails from Kawasaki Ultra 310 owners from across the world that have had the same exact harness issue as me. Now, most of them took this back to their dealer. It was replaced under warranty or at no charge to them. But me, being as stubborn as I am, I insisted on replacing the harness myself. And having to do it 3 times just really took a lot of the fun out of owning this machine. And it's just really disheartening to me that this could have such a big safety issue. Now, I've reported this to the US Coast Guard, I've reported it to the NMMA, and funny enough, none of those organizations care. And I've made some posts about this, but I consider this to be a critical safety defect because corrosion in the harness can cause you to lose power randomly and in dangerous situations. But our government and the manufacturer have not put any focus on this and haven't listened to anything that I've told them. So, it's in their hands now. I've reported the safety defect. I've tried to spread some awareness of it. I've showed users how to fix it. Now it's on them if someone is injured or seriously hurt. It's my job to tell you guys that if you're purchasing one of these machines, the wire harness is the weak point. This is the Achilles heel of the new Ultra 310s. It is a terribly designed harness with very poor quality components. Very, very sad. Very, very frustrating. Now, this goes hand in hand with the wire harness, but Kawasaki has also made some secret changes under the hood. This voltage regulator used to be twice the size, made in Japan. Now it's made in China. The Mikuni throttle body was made in Japan, now made in China. Maybe some of these issues are because of post-COVID production challenges. Either way, the new Chinese components are not the quality that Kawasaki used to be known for. Now, one of the most notable electronic issues is these visibility lights. These are a flagship feature of the ski. So if you're going to put these lights on the front of a personal watercraft, you better make sure that they're built well and they're reliable. And they are neither of those things. These lights failed on me at about 100 hours, water intrusion in the lenses, unserviceable, and back-ordered from Kawasaki. And the worst part is to replace them. You have to remove a front bonnet that requires drilling out a dozen rivets, taking off a dozen bolts, the whole front bonnet, very expensive parts, and that front bonnet, by the way, has to ship freight. So you'll have to pick it up at a dealership, very, very expensive. these lights are extremely unreliable. I deleted them from my ski completely because they're a failure point and they're manufactured very poorly, once again in a third world country. But wait, there's more. This is the electronic fuel pump assembly. You know what? It almost seems like Kawasaki hired the electrical engineer who graduated last in their class to design all the electrical components on this ski, because this pump is not only inadequate in its flow rate, but in its design, durability, and construction. And the size of this filter is absolutely pathetic. This filter has to be serviced every 25 hours. So you might say, okay, that's not too bad. But to get to this pump assembly and the filter assembly, you have to take the entire top deck of the ski apart. A 3 to 4 hour job. Absolutely unacceptable for most consumers. Prior generation Ultra 310s had an incredibly high quality fuel pump assembly and pump, and, you know, under the hood, secretly, Kawasaki swapped it for this Terex fuel pump assembly. That's right, if you go to Google, you'll see that this plastic fuel pump assembly is also found on their Terex machines, which by the way have much smaller engines. This pump assembly is not adequate for the Ultra 310. It's way undersized, the filter is undersized, and it's impossible to get to. For those issues, this is a major defect and design flaw in my opinion. Now let's talk about the exhaust filter. So for the Yamaha guys, this is basically the same as the ribbon that's in the intake manifold of the Yamahas. It's the same concept. So Kawasaki implemented this exhaust filter to mitigate moisture accumulation in the combustion chambers while the ski is stored. So good concept, but the part itself is manufactured to very poor quality standards. The part does not even hold up to the published maintenance intervals. And so if you want to have a machine that you're not taking apart 4 times a year to replace these exhaust filter components, then you'll have to delete the exhaust filter completely using an exhaust filter delete kit. The filter itself just manufactured very poorly. Now some guys in freshwater might not necessarily have an issue, but if you ride in saltwater, this is going to be a recurring, frustrating, and expensive problem for you. So while I don't believe the updraft style exhaust is necessarily a defective design, I do feel that this exhaust filter element itself is designed very poorly and is made of very poor quality materials. I think Kawasaki needs to go back to the drawing board with this and come up with a more durable component that will actually last as long as their published maintenance intervals. Obviously, whoever designed this and wrote the manual doesn't actually ride the ski, or else they would learn very quickly that this part just won't cut it. Finally, let's talk about the supercharger and supercharger drive system. So from the factory, the supercharger pulley is a pulley made of carbon steel. That's right. Take a look at this. 50 hours and my carbon steel supercharger pulley looks like this from saltwater use. So Kawasaki really dropped the ball with the construction and the materials of this pulley. It looks like it came off the Titanic. And going along with this pulley, as I mentioned earlier in this video, Kawasaki has a steel idler pulley on their tensioner arm assembly. Well, this idler pulley is made of carbon steel as well. I believe it might be aluminized, but either way, the finish wears very quickly. So you will have to replace your supercharger pulley and your idler pulley on these machines, especially if you ride in salt water. Luckily, many aftermarket options do exist, but they're not cheap. Alright, so here's the summary. For the Yamaha FX SVHO, one of the main reported issues is premature failure of the supercharger sprag clutch. Also, users report cylinder head cracking, even on new unmodified machines. Issues with the paint and hull has been a long-running issue with Yamaha, although many of these issues were mitigated with the implementation of SMC hulls for their FX series. Nevertheless, there are a few reports of paint peeling issues on new SMC FXs. Either way, the paint on these skis is very fragile and subject to premature wear. I've seen issues reported with the new touchscreens on the Yamaha FX series. The screens become unresponsive or the D-pads stop working. Associated with this is an annoying and persistent low fuel level indicator. The alarm can't be turned off via the physical D-pad, and users have to reach over the handlebars and tap on a teeny little display button to turn off the alarm. It also seems like the alarm comes on when the tank is still half full. The biggest issues with the Kawasaki Ultra 310 don't really relate to the hull or the engine or the platform, but more so with the electrical system. The wire harness in this ski is designed very poorly and is subject to premature corrosion. Also, the flagship visibility lights are manufactured poorly and are not durable or reliable. The fuel pump assembly used on the Ultra 310 is very inadequate and is very difficult for users to service. Also, the exhaust filter element on the Ultra 310 is manufactured very poorly and fails prematurely. The supercharger and idler pulleys on the Ultra 310 are manufactured from low-quality carbon steel. When used in salt water, they rust very prematurely. So whether you're looking at an Ultra 310 or an FX SVHO, you won't be immune from a variety of defects and issues. Every ski has its problems. Some users may experience these issues more than others. In the final segment of part 3 of this series, I'd like to talk about dealership experience and company culture. Besides the machines themselves, some people really value the corporate culture and dealership experience when deciding which personal watercraft to buy. There's nothing like that thrill of walking into a power sports dealer and knowing you'll be leaving with a brand new personal watercraft. Motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs, and four-wheelers, and in the corner, you'll find a portion of the showroom floor dedicated to personal watercraft. Now, in almost any multi-brand showroom across the United States, you'll find 5 dozen Sea-Doos, maybe 2-3 dozen Yamahas, and a handful or less of Kawasaki jet skis. Now, why is this? It's because Kawasaki treats their jet ski line as an afterthought. Yamaha's got a dedicated rep focused only on the WaveRunner line. This fosters dealership partnerships and consumer outreach. Kawasaki always has very few options to choose from on the showroom floor, giving potential buyers very little insight into the brand. And salesmen in a lot of these large dealerships actually steer customers away from Kawasaki jet skis, telling them that the Yamaha products are more reliable and easier to service. What they're really saying is that their dealership network or their larger brand has a robust service department catering to Yamaha, whereas Kawasaki, once again, is an afterthought when it comes to after-sales support and service. It's very difficult for owners to get their Kawasaki jet skis serviced across the country. I know this because I speak with most of them. Yamaha and Sea-Doo will have models that appeal to all income and age ranges, whereas Kawasaki will typically, as I mentioned, only have 1 or 2 skis, and they miss out on a huge potential customer base. Yamaha makes it easy for customers with in-house factory financing provided by Yamaha Finance. Kawasaki utilizes random third-party vendors that vary throughout the United States. Now let's sum this up, but specifically for the Ultra 310 and FX SVHO. When it comes to the Ultra 310, there's very few color options available on the showroom floor. Salesmen are completely clueless. There's no product education on these machines. And salesmen are biased against selling the Kawasaki product. That's my experience. Also, when it comes to the service department, the techs are untrained. I went to 3 of the major dealerships here in South Florida and asked them what it takes to change an exhaust filter. None of them even knew what the exhaust filter was. You'll also be very hard-pressed to find any genuine Kawasaki oils, products, or accessories sold next to their jet skis. And Kawasaki uses third-party finance companies like Synchrony Bank or Sheffield. Some of those finance companies don't even have a website you can access to view account information. You have to mail in a check. Very old school. When it comes to the Yamaha showroom presence, you'll have your pick of the litter with a dominant presence in every showroom that I walked into. There's many options of every model with different colors and trims available. Salesmen and the dealerships themselves are happy to sell you a Yamaha WaveRunner. The techs at those dealerships are fully trained and able to service any make and model of Yamaha WaveRunner. These dealerships typically would have a large display with covers, accessories, Yamalube products, and oil change kits ready to go for buyers to purchase with their personal watercrafts. And also, Yamaha offers in-house factory financing through their corporate finance wing, making it easy for buyers to get approved and service their finance accounts. When it comes to corporate culture, Yamaha is the only personal watercraft brand that continues to manufacture here in the United States. Now, for international buyers, that might not mean a lot, but for those of us at home, we've seen a steady exodus of manufacturing from the United States over the past few decades, and Yamaha is one of the few companies that's continued to cut the stops and keep manufacturing here in Noonan, Georgia. Yamaha has invested heavily in their dealership experience and their service network, and their customers see it. Yamaha also has a robust online and marketing presence, things that Kawasaki lacks. In fact, every single category I've mentioned is something that Kawasaki lags behind in. Their dealership experience is non-existent, their service network is pathetic, and they can't even be bothered to reply to requests and questions from their top fans. So if they treat their top fans like that, how do they treat potential customers? Well, I see the Kawasaki brand withering away simply because Kawasaki just doesn't give up. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 4 of this video, where I cover ocean handling, stock speed testing, stage 1 speed testing, and give you my comprehensive final thoughts on both models. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more exclusive jet ski content, only on JD's Waterworld.